What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, Anime Fiction. I am back with another episode of What If Naruto Teleported to Another World Part 8. And if you did enjoy this video, like this video for the next part. And if you're new to my channel, like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 10. In a mountainous region of Seven, an echo of destruction and the cries of despair and fear echoed in the cold air. Battered and bloodied men and women ran across the snow and rocks, their ragged breaths hanging in the air. They kept looking over their shoulder in hopes of being safe from demons as wizards. But they didn't watch as several dozen wizards cut them down along the way and slaughtered them, leaving the dirt road crimson. The 3rd Division general laughed out loud as he ordered his dozens of command squads to shoot down the smugglers. He watched as the squads patrolling Seven's border mercilessly decimated the feeble peddlers as they struggled to defend themselves in vain. She stood there when a sword pierced her back, cutting her in two. The two pieces remained motionless for a second before merging again, terrifying the attacker who she didn't even recognize. Marika reached back and grabbed the man's neck, twisting and snapping it in several places before letting the body fall lifeless to the ground, joining the pile of twisted, broken, and bruised corpses beneath her. The brown-haired young women rushed to the front door of the destroyed hideout of the drug dealers they had intercepted. She knocked several times with a clenched fist. And then he clenched the fist of the severed arm he was holding and opened the door, hissing as he hurled the appendage like a club. She casually approached a free chair next to his resting master. "Hey, Ji-chan. Are you okay?" The old master raised his head and looked at his merry subordinate covered in blood. "Yes, I'm quite well, Marika. Just a little tired from the journey." "Are you worried about that ninja boy?" The woman dropped her joking attitude and asked the old man with a hint of concern in her tone. She had heard his story and his experience with the group and knew what it had done to him. His paranoia and obsession were always bad. But now that they had concrete proof that one of them was still alive, she couldn't help but worry about his state of mind. "He?" The man looked up and shook his head. No, I think we still have a lot more to worry about with a guy like that." He ran his hand through his snow-white hair as he chuckled. "There will come a time when we meet that boy face to face, and when that time comes, there will be an opportunity to start over, and I can't wait to finally see it." She threw an arm over his shoulder and started stroking his back, making sure she knew they were there for him. The man turned his head towards her and gave her a grateful smile for her gesture. When there was a comfortable silence between them, the general of the 2nd Division ran to report. "Master. We have finished with the manifesto. There won't be another group coming like this for a while." "Very well. Besides, sir, we have a problem outside." Sorrento and Marika looked at each other before standing up and following Uvajan's example. When they got out, they saw several fully grown adult wyverns blocking the way for the four-wheelers. The guild's independent leader observed several men attempting to battle the flying beasts with little or no success. "Apparently we've disturbed their feeding habitat and they're quite angry about it." Marika just shook her head in disappointment at the pathetic show her men were putting on as they fought the creatures. Her split hasn't been good this week. She may have to round them up and teach them some lessons. "What are we to do, master?" The younger generals watched as the scarred old man walked slowly forward until he was at the edge of the hill overlooking the scene. He slowly reached out and covered his entire palm with shock magic. He slowly moved his hand over the lizard figures as orbs of magic floated in the air. He then pointed in the general direction of the wyvern and the balls fired like projectiles. The magic struck the sides of the flying animals before expanding and exploding, bursting out the sides and destroying their bodies. All the creatures fell to the ground dead as the subordinates looked at the master who was staring at them. Everyone began nervously packing and putting them into vehicles as the leaders began to descend the hill. "Do you need to tell me anything else before we start moving inland?" "Yes, sir. We just received this today." He handed his master a newspaper from his back pocket as the bearded man took it and opened it. He read the first page and the subsequent information. He took a deep breath and rubbed his forehead as Marika looked over her shoulder, whistling the title. "Damn, they're scary. Makes me think we could actually have some fun with them." The girl forgot the item and gathered her luggage to put it in her vehicle as she turned to look. "So what should we do, Ji-chan? Send an order and ask our boys to hunt them down?" "No." Alex tore the papers to shreds before turning them to dust with his magic, the wind scattering what was left in his hands. "I don't want any of our men interacting with them unless one of you is with them. That would be too dangerous." He dusted off his hands as he walked towards his men. "No need for a massacre. Not yet." It was another quiet day in many wizards' favorite guild. All the adults cheered happily and enjoyed sipping their drinks. Joke around and enjoy life to the fullest. And standing in front of the bar were the two loudest and rudest members of the younger generation group. "I'm telling you, I don't need my magic to knock you down. I can knock you down and you'll never get up again," the shirtless raven-haired young man yelled. A vein throbbed in his forehead. I'd love to see you try. Her sharp teeth were crushed. That's all. The two boys charged at each other, fists thrown back as far as possible to inflict the most damage. And just before they could, a redhead with armored arms hit her head on the wooden floor. Damn, you two never learn. The scarlet-haired girl just shook her head in disappointment at her boys' continued defiance of her expectations. Do you think we like to see them fight every day? It gets on my nerves. But Urza, you fight Mira so much, don't you? Why yes. Why are you punishing us when you are just as bad? Natsu closed his mouth as he and Gray were lifted by the hair. They froze in fear as they met the fiery gleam of blue and brown eyes. What was that? No, Urza-san. X2, that's what I thought. He dropped the children with a thud as he returned to his seat at the table with his strawberry shortcake. The boy continued to snuggle while Levi giggled and Kana just shook her head in disappointment. From his seat atop the bar, Makarov smiled and laughed at his family's merry game as he drank from his mug. He observed the peaceful atmosphere this weather and early April mood gave to his guild as everyone enjoyed life. Natsu and Gray were also on their feet again. Sure, they were still arguing about the more pointless stuff, but, well, one step at a time. Hello, old man. The gray-haired dwarf glanced out of the corner of his eye at the tall, orange-haired man who had approached him. As usual, the man wore his signature black cloak with a bag still over his shoulder and had just returned from his mission. How is everything? Oh, there's not much to report. Since you've been gone, I've received about 6 pages of invoices and royalties that we owe to the Magic Council for property damage. By the way, the old man leaned back under the counter and lifted a heavy document of about 40 pages in his hands. He turned and handed it to the young man. These are yours. By the way, good job. Okay. I'll take care of it. Suddenly, and without any conscious thought, Gildarts ripped the paper with his crash magic and dropped it to the ground. Oops. He seemed to have accidentally misplaced it. Good move. By the way, you didn't get hurt or anything, right? The tall man shook his head after checking himself for injuries. Good. Poor Lyuzuka will be away for the week so she can stock up on herbs and supplies. I've already told the kids to stay safe and not make too much noise when they're at work. You know what happens when he comes back from vacation to tend to a restless child's wounds, right? Oh no, I like where my balls are, thanks, smart boy. Gildarts. Fight me. A pink blob covered in fire leapt to attack the older wizard. Got it, kid. I'll fight with all my might. Absently, he twisted her wrist as he approached the fairy tale ace. As a result, the dragon slayer was sent flying towards the guildhall scaffolding, bouncing like a rubber ball before falling back to the ground, leaving another imprint of his body for the one Urza had made for him. Makarov looked at the spiral-eyed boy as he raised an eyebrow. Is he still here? You must have stayed a while. Gildarts only shrugged, attributing fatigue to the long mission. When most of the children laughed at the poor boy as Lisana began to worry and control him, the man pulled a couple of papers from under his long cloak and handed them to the old man. Here, Makarov took the cards from his hand as he looked at the young man with a silent question. I think you should read it. The man has just left his ever-present staff and opened the paper, flipping through the stories in the blurb. He arrived at what he could only imagine was the story he was supposed to read about. He sighed and shook his head, scratching the cap that covered his hair. Well, that's a shame. I hate it when they post articles like this. The old guildmaster hated it when tragedies like this were publicly advertised and marketed. He believed horrific events like this should be handled by the council and its people, and not used to cause paranoia in innocent civilians. What is it, master? The two men gasped as the little armored knight suddenly entered the conversation. And her intrusion made the other young wizards turn their attention to their elderly grandfather. She raised an eyebrow as if he expected an immediate response from the nervous-looking men. Makarov suddenly set fire to the newspaper as the children gaped at his actions. It's nothing, Urza. Nothing at all. Natsu, do you want to try? Do you want a treat? He tossed the burning cards as the young man leapt to his feet and gulped down the fire in one go. The other kids just watched in disappointment as he chewed through the flyers, oblivious to the stares before turning his head to face them. That. Gildarts simply shook his head as he laughed at the children's antics. Well, I'm done for today. I'm going home for now, man, see you. He crossed a wall as timber collapsed around him, not caring about the obstacles in his direct path to his house. Shouts of the townspeople as he walked between their shops and homes, and following it. Gildarts. Rematch. I ate and I'm excited. Start. No. Leave me alone. Never. While the old master only laughed at the boy's tireless efforts to defeat the dominated man, he missed the questioning look Urza was throwing him from the side. She couldn't help but wonder what had prompted the master and expert wizard to conspire like this. But whatever it was, it couldn't be good. The young man kept panting heavily as he ran as fast as he could along the beautiful and pristine marble halls, the view of boundless nature right by his side. He clutched the important file to his chest as the large detailed door appeared. He walked to the gates catching his breath, looking around to see if the other soldier in charge of the special intelligence transport had arrived. Curse. Curse. Where? Where's who? The bespectacled boy squealed as he almost jumped out of his skin and fell to the floor. He clutched his heart as he watched the arrogant black-haired boy laugh with a smirk on his face. TCH, damn it, Duranbald, this is not the time to play. Where the hell were you? What? I've been here the whole time. I don't know about your slowness, but I've been here since I received my folder. He showed the black file he was holding while laughing at the angry look his training partner was giving him. You need to seriously work on the meaning of the urgency, Lahar. If you want, I can teach you some of my teleportation magic. No thank you, the boy with his shoulder-length black hair dusted off his standard private uniform as he made his way to the council doors. He opened them with both hands as his companion followed, entering the large hall of the council meeting place. As they entered, many of the distinguished members looked at the boys. Private Lahar and Private Duranbald report. The two greeted the older figures as they sat around the huge round table. One of the old members lowered his hand and waved them to relax. Okay, Lahar-kun, Duranbald-kun. You arrived just in time. A kind-looking old man wearing a brown shirt with a cocked hat over his large eyebrows. No, it is not. If they wish to become competent members of the Rune Knights, they must practice punctuality and arrive when expected. You have been entrusted with an important task, so you must do your best when asked. A short man with cat-eared hair and a blue-striped shirt said sternly to the embarrassed young men. As he was about to continue his accusation of the young soldiers, he was interrupted by a cheerfully laughing young male voice followed by a soft, gentle laugh. I find it quite amusing that you're checking them for being late. Yet you're wasting even more of our precious time doing it. The cocky blue-haired boy crossed his legs as he punched his chin. He opened his eyes to look at the older wizards as they all seemed to stare at him with weak eyes. Behind her chair was a young teenager with silky purple hair that fell down her back. She was wearing a thigh-length white dress with a yellow sash. He's right, you know. Worry about training the soldiers later and we can get on with the job at hand. The girl covered her mouth with her sleeve as she giggled a little at the annoyed look Michello was trying to match. The two new recruits watched the slightly hostile air around the council as the short-haired boy leaned towards his fellow rider. Who are those two? Lahar sighed in disappointment as he looked at the other teenager with a blank stare. Didn't you hear the orientation last month? Duranbald just matched her blank gaze as Lahar realized who he was talking to. Those are the two new board members. They are brilliant political strategists who have been able to settle quarrels and problems across the country in just a few weeks. They were so good that he was offered board member positions at such a young age. He pointed at the blue-haired boy with a strange tattoo above his right eye. That's Seagrain Sama, a powerful wizard who's already been considered for membership in the 10 Wizard Saints. And that's her assistant Ultir Sama, a woman with a great deal of magic and a huge network of world communication. Oh wow. Stop staring and whining. Everyone in the room shut up when the leader of the group, a bearded man with a club on his head, yelled at them to shut up. The council members sat down again as he rose from his chair and looked at the boy with the red folder in his hand. Private Lahar, do you have news for us? Yes sir. The bespectacled member of the couple began thumbing through his file and looking for the first order of business. First on the list, we have the bills and damage caused by fairy tale in the last. Please, not that. Anything but that. I get enough of this news every day, so skip it for now. Lahar nodded as he agreed to Org's request and moved on. And the next the council looked anxious as the boy spent several minutes leafing through the huge piles of papers swirling around the pesky guild. As the men and women sighed wearily, Ultir and Seagrain seemed to take it as a joke and laughed heartily when the boy finally got some urgent news. Yeah, we have news about that mercenary guild that showed up several weeks ago, sir. That of the Bunce family heiress. Oh? What does that have to do with it? It seems that the leader of the group is looking for the best swordsman in the kingdom to join his nobility. And he was collecting top-level magical weapons to use to his advantage. Org nodded. Any report? Yes, we have received a report from the Hartfilia family. He pulled a written note from his folder and showed it to everyone in front of him. In the last year he has received death threats from the heir to the old guild. We believe his motives probably stem from the fact that Jude Hartfilia took over the Bunce family and mothballed them. He ignored the threats until he received word that the man was forming a guild to kill his family. Is he a really plausible threat? Well, he's gathering enough swordsmen to be called the 44 Ronin, so he's no doubt recruiting strong members for the fray. Also, sir, He adjusted his glasses as he looked at the council with a worried look. We have received reports that the man was carrying a black sword, which sliced its way through everything in front of him. So we believe he is carrying it. All the members seemed to stiffen. He rose at the mention of the magical item in the unsteady man's grip. Well, that's worrying. Issue a report to keep the Heartfilia family under the council's protection until these Ronin are put out of action. Is there anything else to report? Oh. In regards to the matter of the Damnation Guild, we have a development we need to investigate. Everyone present cringed at the mention of the infamous terrorist guild. Last week, we received reports of a group of citizens who had escaped an attack by the Damnation. They were civilians from the town of Acacia who were being held hostage by a group of 3rd Division led by what we believe may be Mordro, the Scaler. Do you believe? Yes, sir. We couldn't be sure because... Well, he was missing his head. All the council members shuddered and gagged a bit at his excessive treatment of criminals. We also found the bodies of several members of the group around the city who were also deceased. We can't be sure, but we have obtained reports from witnesses who believe Alexander Sorrento left the area with his subordinates Marika and Uvijin. So maybe he got rid of the group himself so he doesn't have unfinished business. Org rubbed his temples as he contemplated the state a respectable man like Colonel Sorrento could fall into from such pristine admiration at this. He remembered a time when everyone in the kingdom looked at him with eyes full of wonder and respect. He was to be honored with the position of Wizard Saint and always held up as a symbol that children would fight for. But then, the Tonwa incident, and his fall into madness, proving that a horrific and devastating event can change a person for the rest of their life. Org's eyes widened as he noticed something in the report. Wait. How did the citizens escape? They couldn't have fought them, not when they couldn't even use magic. Well, sir, we believe there has been some outside intervention. The townspeople have given us a description of a young wizard who appeared out of nowhere and detained the party long enough for them to escape. Lahar rummaged through his folder and pulled out a paper sketch of the mysterious Samaritan. He has been described. Like 13 to 14 years old. He has blonde hair and eyes with 2 distinctly different color pigmentations. Blue on the left hoof, brown on the right. He was also seen wearing dark clothing and a glove on his left arm. Also, sir, they said he had whiskers on his face. Some that looked like mustaches. The rough sketch of the young teenager was passed around the table by all board members. When he got into the hands of the new board member, he looked at him for several long seconds. He did well to keep his composure as he looked at the graphite photo of his former colleague. He giggled a little at the new information about her friend's survival, and handed it to Ultir when she was really surprised. Are you saying this guy might have been the one who killed the members of that group? We can't be sure. But I think we should send a report to the guilds to search and capture this man if they find him. So we can inform you about the event. The council nodded to the teenager's suggestion as Org began making notes to send to the guild masters, then looked at the other recruit as he stood there in silence. What about you? Immediately, the boy with the cropped hair appeared at his side with the briefcase for the man to get. As Org took his hand, the boy appeared again at Lahar's side. The elderly counselor leafed through the black file as his eyes clouded over. He closed the file and looked at all the fellow board members with a stern fire in his eyes. We need to report this to every unit in the nation. Stay alert to report and capture these people. If they are found, they must report directly to ERA with all the information they have received. We need to monitor all possible attack zones and targets within a 100-mile radius of the last attack, and evacuate as many civilians as possible before they become victims of the next attack. Go. The soldiers saluted and left to relay their orders to the older knights. Silently, Ultir looked at the black folder in the council leader's hand. Sir, what is it about? We have just received reports that a village in the mountains has been razed to the ground, with every magic item and building searched and destroyed. They have also recently appeared all over the country looking for something they need and have used every method at their disposal to achieve their goals. And being the founder and cornerstone of this so-called Balam Alliance for another reason, we should be tired of this group. We must prepare for any conflict with this Grimoire heart. I mean it. These guys are making my pants wet. Making treaties with every dark corporation in the nation. Attacking people in the middle of the night, that's right. Scary shit. The wrinkled man in the horse-drawn carriage worried as he continued on the road towards the city. Seriously, you know what this means, kid? We could all be in danger and be eliminated in a second. He glanced over his shoulder at the blond boy in a black shirt and white pants with a black cloak sitting comfortably in the hay with a ragged book in his hand, not paying attention to the one-sided conversation. What? The whisked boy lowered the newspaper and looked at the taxi driver. Oh, sorry old man. I wasn't listening. What were you saying? He scratched the back of his neck and laughed as the old man seemed to go crazy. Ah. You never listen to me when I talk to you, you ungrateful brat. He growled the old farmer as he continued to drive the wagon to the next stop. The traveling wizard he was escorting in his chariot had appeared at the entrance to his city 2 days ago, saying he wanted a shuttle to Yarrow and then to Magnolia, which would only be a day's journey away. When the old farmer finally agreed, the boy had embraced the man until his spine crunched. And there they were, on the riverside path to Yarrow. So what is so beautiful about this city? Something about magic. Naruto rested his chin on the bench atop the wagon as he glared at the farmer, frowning. I told you, boy, Yarrow is a town of magic and wonder. He stressed his importance by waving his arms frantically. It's a city that specializes in the use and distribution of magic throughout the country. It's also known as a popular center for health and self-preservation. Naruto cocked his head as he narrowed his eyes. The village concentrates its use of magic along the river right there. He guided the boy's eyes to the river beside him. That river is so full of magic that it actually assimilates magic into the foliage and herbs that grow on its banks. People from all over the world come to Yarrow to harvest these plants to make special medicines. They are so famous that even high-ranking doctors from all over Fury come to collect the plants that go into the sea. Listen to me? The driver shouted to the boy, who seemed to be dozing off as he explained the history of the town. Oh, sorry. I didn't sleep last night. Too excited. Naruto chuckled as he tried to contain his anxiety, which he couldn't because he kept jumping up and down on the back of the car, prompting more nagging complaints from the driver. It was there. So close she could taste it. Well, we're almost there anyway, so just relax and then we can. The car came to an abrupt stop as the two men looked on in shock. The city was burning. The many buildings and homes were covered in fire and smoke as the echo of screams reached their ears. The man trembled as he gripped the ropes tightly in his hands. What is this? How can this be? The boots hit the ground as the boy passed the horse-drawn carriage. He stroked the mane of the horse beside him as he looked out over the burning city. Old man, he flips this thing over and goes home. Inform the authorities of this. Naruto dropped his hand and started walking towards the seat in front of him. Wait boy. Can't you just, he gasped when Naruto turned and looked at him with a piercing look in his eyes. The two colors looked directly at him as if inviting him to try and stop the boy from leaving. Go. The man did not hesitate to turn his horses back and change direction towards the town from which they had just arrived. As the gallop of the horses got further and further away, Naruto started walking towards the city and the burning forest. And then, he ran ahead. The dozen guild members lowered their armada of weapons and began to flock to the huge red and black airship that had landed. On the front of the ship and on all the men's clothing was the insignia of a heart covered with thorns. All the men were dressed differently with their own styles and quirks, but they were all dressed in a dark, themed color to follow their guild's lead. Dude, why did we have to come all this way just to destroy a stupid city? You know, man. Without Ultir-sama to lead the charges, we must all unite together. Master said so. But why did we have to kill everyone again? Because the key discovered by Ultir-sama can't be harvested without sacrifice. We can't bring a death mage back to life without using a little death, right? Dude, whatever. I wish we could do away with. All the members of the Dark Guild stopped thinking when they heard the movement of stones and debris. They saw a woman, ragged and bleeding, making her way through the rubble. She stumbled a little and struggled to regain her balance, shocked by the traumatic event. Only until she looked to her side to see the men who had suddenly attacked her city did she scream and try to flee. Shit. A survivor. What do we do? We have to go after her, right? Who knows what the master will do if we let anyone get out of here? Got it. A black-haired member said as he slowly chased after the terrified girl. All the guild members were laughing as she did her best to escape his clutches. The woman was crying, her tears streaming down her face as she desperately tried to find an escape. She could hear the man approaching her because she couldn't find her feet and couldn't escape. The man drew his sword as the woman stumbled and fell at his feet. She tried to crawl away, moaning and screaming. The man raised his sword above his head, the burning of houses and trees only intensifying the fear in the woman's heart. The dark wizard was about to finish him off until he saw a shadow moving in the forest in front of him. He looked up in time to see a large figure in a black cloak leap before him. The person turned and kicked the wizard in the back, causing him to gasp and fly backward several feet. The guild members all watched in silence as their teammates slid several feet to the ground before moaning and falling onto his butt. Everyone looked from where he landed to where he came from. Everyone turned their heads to a blond boy in a cape and boots who was staring at them. Naruto turned his head on his shoulders at the terrified woman, and in a strong and decisive tone. Run. The woman wasted no time and ran as fast as she could through the forest. Naruto turned his head to the surprised Dark Guild as he retrieved the spiked bats he had copied into his right hand. It took a moment for the wizards to realize what was happening. Hit. Naruto rushed forward and dove under a sword slash above his head. He hit the man with the club and threw it over two other men. Naruto dodged several spears and axes as he used the stolen mace to parry and disarm the men. As one of the blades was about to cut him, he raised his left arm and fended off the blow and destroyed the sword. While avoiding a large club from falling on him, he tripped the big man and threw him on his head. Naruto leapt to his feet as a dozen men tried to kill him, but he easily dodged the buff's blows. When one of them screamed loudly and tried to break him, Naruto jumped on top of him, using his back as a springboard. He used a flying glove on his bent shoulder and sent it crashing to the ground with a painful thud. As the mustachioed boy landed on the ground, the members of Grimoire Heart began using their magic, screaming loudly as they tried to scare the boy long enough to finish him off. Naruto wasn't hindered by his attempts as he calmly and quickly dodged all of his attacks. As he lunged back and charged into the men around him, he saw a fire mage to the side gathering his magic into the palm of his hand. Fire shot. The fire-based attack flew straight at Naruto and was covered in a cloud of smoke. The wizard looked amused, believing he had killed the intruding child. His eyes widened as he saw the boy with the metal arm outstretched, smoke billowing from the palm where he had effortlessly parried the attack. No marks or even a speck of dust on the baby's clothes. He lowered his hand and smiled at the surprised wizards. Please. So I guess you found another one of those keys on your little treasure hunt. Was it hard? Not necessarily, said the bearded old man as he played with his latest discovery to make his dream come true. The key in his hand gleamed faintly as he turned it, illuminated by the light from the teardrop behind him. He opened a case in the room and placed it next to three other identical keys. And then he carefully closed the latches to keep them safe. It is important that we move before the board finds out our next move. We may have to hide for a while. Well, if they send forces against you, I doubt they'll be able to stand up to you. Now that you've got that new eye. The black-bearded man reflected as he played with some of his cards. Dolls on the other side of the magical device. I still wouldn't trust this thing too much. I just implanted it and Tartaros told me it doesn't even have half its full potency. Something about outdated technology and more time needed to create a more powerful apparatus for magic. Besides, I'm still weak after the surgery. The tall, white-bearded man lightly touched the bandages that were wrapped around his right eye. He addressed the man who spoke within the teardrop from his revealed position. But I have to thank you, Ivan. Without your tearful contribution I could not have started this little project of mine. It's my pleasure, Hades-san. Although I ask you to receive my compensation for this small favor of yours, said the former fairy tale wizard as he looked at the waiting guildmaster. That information you promised me about fairy tales, weakness. In due time, Ivan. The man turned to look at the fairy wizard with a steady gaze. I will deliver what you want after I get the full power of this system. Under the bandage a red light shone dimly. Until then, we. The doors to the darkroom opened as a guild member panted in. Ha Hades-sama, we have a. The old wizard moaned as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. I'll call you back, Ivan. He cut off the communication while looking at his subordinate of him. So what happens now? Naruto Hook kicked another attacker in the face as he fell to the ground. Surrounding the boy were members of the Heart unconscious, spaced out and salivating from the severe beating the boy received. Some of them were kicked in the head so hard that their eyes were rolling. Some of them were so hit in the chest that it was difficult for them to breathe. Naruto was surprisingly calm in front of all the soldiers surrounding him. A scratch on his cheek from which he hardly oozed blood. And some scratches on the pants and shirt. According to him, the worst injury would be someone who cuts a corner of his favorite cloak. He had it from Harjin, damn it. He wasn't discouraged that there were still so many soldiers for his blood. In his professional opinion, none of these guys had the skills or mentality to strike him in the throat. By comparison, Mordro and his damnation group were far more terrifying and bloodthirsty. These guys were just foot soldiers, used to puff up the pack and make it scarier on the cover. He doubted there were any people in this guild who had actually trained hard in a spell instead of obtaining one and using it on innocent people. So even though there were a lot of them, he believed he could overcome them. Hey man, what the hell are you? Said one of the unnamed boys in front of him. Why did you come here? It matters. Of course it matters. This doesn't concern you. What worries me is that there are people like you who take the lives of so many people. Naruto glanced out of the corner of his eye at the multitude of corpses hidden among the rubble and houses. And I'm here to stop you from doing anything else. Stop us. Are you really going to stop us? Everyone here? One of the men stepped out of the crowd as he waved to everyone in the group around him. Think you have a chance? Yes. Yes. Because you don't have the courage to accept the consequences of what you did. So I'm here to show you everything that happens when you kill like this. It extended his magical power as far as possible, covering his entire body with light as the ground around him rumbled. Is first. I will make everyone here pay for what you did. The guild perked up and gripped their weapons tightly, aiming at the angry boy. But before they could make a move, they all stopped. Looking at the child with horror and dread. Everyone backed away and trembled with fear. Naruto looked questioningly at the retreating men as he seemed to calm down. Well, I still won't let you get away. Then I guess I'll be the first. Naruto gasped when he realized the new voice was coming directly from behind him. Then he noticed that the figure behind him had immense magical pressure pouring out of him unconsciously. He would have punished himself for not having noticed that impossible presence if he hadn't been so frozen with fear. It was hard for her to even breathe as he mechanically turned his head to look over her shoulder. The man looked at him from his enormous frame, slightly shorter than Mordro but infinitely more terrifying. He wore a large black cloak that was attached to a cloak over his shoulders and came down to his ankles. He had long white hair with a matching mustache and a waist-length beard. She was wearing a dark red shirt and brown pants. But what Naruto noticed almost immediately was the fact that the old man had some sort of bandage around his right eye and forehead. Naruto remembered the blindfolded man who had used him as a weapon in his previous life. But the eye that was not covered looked down on him, like a mammoth noticing an ant that has moved in its path. Naruto gasped for breath as he found the air around him ice cold and even heavier to move. The man then seemed to move his mouth, speaking words that Naruto couldn't understand until he regained his focus. I do not know you. Instantly Naruto jumped as far and as fast as he could to get away from the terrifying old man. He landed in a crouch, arms and legs bent as close to the ground as possible. His breathing was heavy and rapid as the boy tried to calm his rapid heartbeat. Naruto's eyes darted from side to side of his vision, trying to find a way that he could escape with so much blood still in his body. He would never have considered her an option against those guys in the tower, and neither would damnation. Hell, he was still scared of that bastard Danzo, but he'd do anything to defeat that wrinkled bastard. But this guy was worse than anything she'd ever known before. Honestly, I think I've met you somewhere before. The man rubbed his chin as if he were in deep thought as he tried to contemplate where he had seen this blonde boy before. You weren't on that Akane Beach cruise last year, were you? You know, where did the shrimp go and they had to fish for more food and they caught that shark instead? He looked at the boy while his expression of concentrated fear and fury was still fully focused on the old man. I guess not. She looked at all the unconscious members of her guild and those who were still watching the conflict unfold. And then finally, to the boy crouched like an animal on the prowl. So what can I do for you? Out of sheer instinct, Naruto used all of his strength to push himself forward towards the man. It obviously took him by surprise as the man in the cloak had a surprised expression all over his face. She slammed her left shoulder into the man's broad chest, earning a painful grunt from the old man. Flowing through him, Naruto sent as much armor into his arms as possible as he smashed the bat's head so hard into the man's stomach that he was lifted into the air. Naruto spun around and used the mace to throw the man over his head, gritting his teeth as he concentrated only on the man in the blindfold. Using as much armor as he could, he rushed forward to match the speed with which the man rose from the ground. Leaping after him, she staggered back and ensured that the pointed end of the weapon struck the bandaged blonde spot on the man's side. The man screamed in pain as he was hurled in another direction by the force of the attack. Finally he stopped bouncing and lay down on the floor. He raised his head only to see the boy glaring at him with pure contempt as he retracted his right fist covered in a bright light. She punched the man in the face as hard as he could as he thrust down with all of his strength. Flying glove. The man's head was driven further into the ground as Naruto jumped back, watching the dust settle around the motionless man. The rest of the guild watched in shock as the boy took a deep breath and looked at the guild master. He seemed to calm down after a few tense moments, with no indication that the man was still conscious or alive. Well, that was amazing. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as the man sat up if the man made a dent in the ground. He took the notch off his neck because he seemed to think the boy's barrage was nothing more than a minor nuisance. Almost a bruise scratched on the man's body or face. What the hell? Naruto was shaking. No one he'd fought before would come out unscathed. Demons, even Mordro would have felt pain for his body. But this man, this old and wrinkled white hair man, barely received harm. She watched with concern as the man stood up with no obvious injury or pain in his movements. She looked at Naruto with an almost casual glint in his eyes. That was pretty impressive. No wonder none of my men can take on you, you overwhelm them before they have a chance. He wiped a stain off his custom cape as if he were having a casual conversation. What kind of magic was that? That must have been required that you were using to get that weapon you were using, but that other was quite surprising. A proportional relationship between magic and power increase in your attacks, right? Interesting. She giggled as she urged the boy to try again. Come. Naruto felt an unfamiliar feeling of disgust rise in his chest as he looked at the man in front of him. and hearing him invite him to attack only made the boy angrier. He ducked and leapt in front of the man, calling to the other bat in his hand as he brandished two hands. She kicked the man with an axe when he pinned it with the back of his arm. Naruto took off the extended limb as he landed again, right in front of the open chest of the open man. He began to slide the bats as quickly and harshly possible in humans. But he dodged and dodged with only minimal effort. Naruto got angry when he tried to beat the man to a pulp. He leapt to his feet and began sending a flurry of armored kicks into the man's chest. While Naruto was suspended by continuous contact against the man's chest, the man stumbled backwards with each punch the boy threw. As he delivered the last kick, he swung his leg over his shoulder to keep it in place. She raised the clubs above her head and aimed to crush the man's head between the spikes. In a careless move, he hit the blonde as hard as he could in the chest. Naruto's eyes widened as he spat large quantities of blood, splattering all over the old wizard's face. Hades pulled his punch back and punched even faster at the same spot, sending the boy flying to the ground. Naruto rolled on the ground several times, dropping bats from his hands as he finally stopped. The dirty boy tried to lift his head, but found it increasingly difficult, coughing up blood from the incredibly powerful attack. He looked up and saw the man walking slowly towards him, crushing bats like old cans under his feet. The man stopped in front of him with a smile on his face. "Seriously, I want to see the extent of your power. I have another guild member your age, you know. She is also quite strong. I think if you two fought, it would be a spectacular fight. But he would still win, even if only by a small margin." "Who are you?" "I am the guildmaster of Grimoire Heart. But there's nothing to worry about, boy. I'm more interested in you. Who could you be?" I'm the guy who has to take you down." Naruto pulled his hands away and got up on shaking knees to stare at the man with all his fury. "Why should you care?" "Because I know people like you. I have met monsters like you who kill others like flies." "They're just flies. They're not. They're people. They want to live their life and you come and finish it. That's right. It is nothing serious. I can take these people's lives because they are nothing but blind sheep in my eyes. Living their useless, dreamless lives like a well-oiled machine. I am taking your lives and giving you purpose. A means by which they can finally be useful to this world. For a greater cause." Naruto's eyes widened at the man's last statement. He looked at the tall man as an image superimposed on him. For Naruto, it was like watching this man and Danzo standing side by side, spewing the same old crap about greater causes and the purpose of taking the lives of others. Naruto gritted his teeth as he seethed with anger. "Bastard. What? How can you say that so easily? Like it doesn't concern you? Does it mean nothing to you? The lives you took? The people you killed? Does that mean something to you?" Naruto looked at Hades, surprised by the calm response he gave the wounded boy. "I can see it in your eyes. The look of someone who has had their hands soaked in the blood of another. Or at least I witnessed it long enough not to seem too traumatized by it. I'm right?" "And no. No, I am. Don't even think you can lie to me, boy. I can see it with this eye." He pointed to the bandaged eye. "That arm under the metal of reform is tainted by the power of the devil. I feel it swelling inside you. Evil. Hate. Envy and greed. Pain. Your whole arm is drenched in it. So much so that it become deformed and dangerous, right?" Naruto trembled in fear as he gripped the forearm of his prosthetic shell. Feeling horrible pain but a disturbing truth in the man's words. "You're not even a full human anymore, are you? You've taken so many lives that now you're trying to make up for it. Protect whoever you can against people who still follow the path you once took. And what you are doing is admirable. And it's going quite well too. But not by much." Hades would have been lying if he had said that he wasn't feeling a strange satisfaction in seeing how badly he was influencing this boy's thinking with his words. "You can fight that urge for as long as you want. Get away from it. Ignore him. Imagine it never existed in the first place. But one day, when the people you've been trying to help are dead at your feet and you're soaked in their blood, you'll break. And you will kill everyone around you. Be friends or enemies. Most likely with the same hand." Naruto had an incomparable feeling of horror building in his chest. Would that really happen? She remembered the hate and power he had gained from childhood whenever his temper was so wild that he could no longer control himself. Would it happen again? Would he kill again for no good reason? Like what Danzo made him do? If he did, who would die? Jelal, Mila-chan, everyone in Fairy Tail. Elsa. The boy was distracted as this fear gripped him. Hades smiled and held out his hand to the boy who was trembling in front of him. "Join me." Naruto looked up at the steady hand and calm smiling face of the man he was trying to incapacitate right now. "If you come with me, I can give you purpose. A lens that best suits your interests. A reason that supports your strength, which will allow you to stop getting in your way and just go crazy. And in return, we can create a new world. One who won't ostracize you because of your past or what you've become. If you leave here, you will be a time bomb, waiting for the moment when your instincts take over and turn you into an animal. But if you come with me, I can give you a whole new world. What do you say? Hades looked at the dumbfounded blonde, his eyes so wide that his skull almost popped out and his mouth couldn't find the right words. The boy seemed to contemplate something for a moment before walking slowly towards the older man and stopping in front of him. Naruto raised his right hand and brought it to Hades' outstretched hand. The man smiled because he had just won a powerful young ally. Naruto growled and jumped, aiming to punch the man in the face with his right fist. Naruto made contact but realized the old man had placed his left hand between his cheek and the boy's fist. As he lowered Naruto to the ground, getting a hiss in response as he felt the old man begin to crush his fist, Naruto looked at the man with fire burning in his eyes. I will never join you. Hades glared at the angry boy in the black cloak as he glared at him with utter contempt. The old guildmaster knew where he'd seen the boy before, as his stunning demeanor matched the photos he had on file. He nodded his head as he remembered who this boy was. Well, that's a shame. Hades clenched the hand that was about to make the pact into a fist and hit the boy in the face with all his strength, aiming to make it concave. But in return, Hades noticed that the boy was using his reformed left arm to block his attack, not losing an inch as the man put more power into his attack. Hades nodded in surprise, awesome. Naruto reached out and pulled them out of the impasse they'd been in a moment before. The boy then engaged the man in hand-to-hand combat, slamming his elbow into Hades' knee and attempting to maim him. But Hades easily maneuvered the attempt and spun, fists at his sides. When he came full circle, he began to land a series of powerful but rapid blows at the boy's center, only to be blocked by the boy's failed attempt to shield himself with his injured arms. As the count was already building up, the boy's arms looking more black and bruised by the second, Naruto decided to match his ferocity. When Hades went to strike him again, his fist met the boy's left fist, keeping them both paralyzed. As Hades tried to overpower Naruto's attempt to block his blow, he had to admit that the boy was very resourceful and tenacious. Naruto thrust his fist back and covered his entire body with armor, trying to at least make himself strong enough to get close to his left fist. Naruto then returned the barrage, aiming for the man's stomach and knocking him back a few steps in the process. When Naruto finally broke through with his attacks, he began repeatedly punching the man in the stomach, earning a painful grunt from all who came in contact. With his last attack, he forced the old man to double over to the throat. Then he grabbed the old bastard by the hair and back and threw him as far as possible, flying several feet over the heads of the guild members who were still outside watching the fight. Naruto watched with bated breath as the man lay on his back for several tense seconds. Then he got up and dusted himself off as usual. Naruto groaned and readied his fighting stance in the old man's direction, watching every subtle move he made. All he got was a smile and a finger pointed at his feet. When Naruto finally realized there was something stuck to his feet, he was already lifted. Magic Chain's Naruto was lifted over the man's head and then slammed straight to the ground. As the blonde wizard gasped for air, the man was spinning him, laughing as he pulled the boy like a ball on a string. Naruto was sent crashing into burning houses, standing trees, collected debris, and was held under the river for several seconds before being slammed to the ground again. Hades smiled at the boy on the ground who was trying to breathe with his trembling form, blood pouring from his forehead and mouth. The experienced wizard decided to be merciful and end the boy's suffering at that moment, considering him human. He pointed at a large rock on his shoulder and grabbed it with chain magic. When he grabbed the stone, he raised it above his head and quickly lowered it, aiming at the blonde's wounded form. Just as the boulder was about to crush Naruto, he raised his left arm above his head and was met by the boulder plummeting down. Either from the ground or at the boy's hand, the rock exploded, covering the area with dust. Hades called his chains and walked towards the motionless form of the dirty boy. He stood there silently as he watched the beaten boy, smiling to himself because he couldn't see any sign of breathing or movement on him. Suddenly, the boy leapt to his feet and summoned one of his two signature swords, the broad one with the double-sided blade. He caught the man off guard as Hades watched in surprise, watching as the boy drew his Excalibur and aimed to split the man's head in two. Naruto exploded and tripped the man slightly, hiding his face from the panting, sweaty boy. Naruto waited and watched, focusing his unfocused eyes on the man's figure as he begged for a decent hit. Hades got up correctly, turning and looking at the boy. He had a thin cut from the bridge of his nose to the upper right side of his forehead. The bandages around his head had been cut off and hung limp around his skull. Naruto watched in shock as the scope of his surprise attack was nothing more than a cut rag and enough blood to fill a quarter of a thimble. Hades calmly stood up and wiped the thin cut from his face, taking the slight blood loss with him. He rubbed the red liquid on his fingers for a moment before chuckling a little and looking at the boy calmly. That was a good ambush you set up. If I were anyone else, my head would probably be rolling on the ground right now. But unfortunately for you, I can see everything. Naruto simply exhaled and held the Excalibur in both hands, pointing it at the man who stood calmly
That's
before
it for
him
this
as he
podcast.
seemed to be
Thanks for
thinking about a
listening to this
difficult
video. If you
decision.
did enjoy this
But
part
I
of the
feel you
story,
deserve a reward
like,
for getting
share,
this
and
far.
subscribe for more,
I
and
can't let you
comment down
go,
below.
he won't join
Thank
me.
you all for
Hades
having
continued to
support, and
think
have a
about his
great day.
options before snapping his fingers as if he had an epiphany. I know, Naruto watched patiently as the man grabbed the bandage that was wrapped around his head and slowly began to unwrap it. Naruto prepared to cut off the old man's arms until he felt a strange presence begin to appear around him. Naruto tried to keep his balance as the mysterious power continued to skyrocket, overriding any power he could imagine, nearly reaching Kurama's power level. When Hades finished taking off the bandage around his head, well, you should be an honest boy. You will be the first to experience the power of the Devil's Heart. Inside the halls of the stalled airship, all members of the Dark Guild ran in a frenzy as they prepared for the ship to take off. All they needed was for their master to return as soon as he was done with the boy and they would be gone. Seriously, man. Where the hell is that boy from? He just appeared out of nowhere and started kicking our ass. I don't know, but I hope Hades-sama can take care of him. Don't you think I can? I can't tell. That boy is really tough and young and Master Hades is older than a mummy. So maybe he could. Before the guild member could continue his pessimistic statement, there was a loud bang, a thud and a buzz, through the ship. What the hell is he? Almost every member who could spare time ran to the source of that mysterious sound in their ship. As they approached, hundreds of members were trying to make their way to the front to gaze into the room with the eerie purple glow. Inside the room was a large container of liquid with a foreign object inside. The shape pulsed as the machinery it was connected to began to activate, creating a great deal of energy to build up before his eyes. The light shone even brighter, revealing a plate beneath the glass displaying her words. Heart of the Grimoire. Were you worried about something? Here is your answer. Experiments and test modules led by Brain-sama. Technology and operations led by the best members of Tartaros. The best machinery and invaluable forms of Terra magic provided by Ivan-sama to create the most powerful magic system together with the Council's Etherian. And in the center of it all, the beating heart of our master. The Devil Heart Power System. All the guild members laughed because there was absolutely no chance that the boy could save his life now. Naruto was speechless. His mouth was open as he tried to figure out his next course of action. He tried to run, towards or away from the man, but found his legs had become useless. Frozen with fear at the sight before him, the old man was looking directly at him, a sheepish smile on his face as he easily realized that the boy was pinned down. His beard and mustache were sharper and slightly fluttering from excess power. The right eye he had revealed to the boy was black with a bright red center, intended to disembowel the young wizard like a fish. But most terrifying was the immense spike in the man's already impressive magic. The longer he stood there, the colder and darker the power grew, frightening the mustachioed wizard like he had never experienced before. The man raised the hand that held the used bandages and laughed, dropping them to the floor. I could have shown you so much. The very existence and extent of what your magic could do. Power and strength that no one else could even begin to comprehend. And in the end, a world made for us, where you could have changed everything yourself. Oh good. The man bent down and picked up a small stone near his foot. He toyed with his hand as he looked at the boy fondly. Do you know what this eye can give me? What in the world can I do? The boy stiffened as the man held the stone firmly in his grip. Anything. A strange black substance began to emanate from the stone. It folded and changed shape as it grew in size and stature. Naruto watched in bewilderment as his strange magic transformed into a strange kind of humanoid shape. A leaping creature as tall as Hades' navel, only slightly taller than Naruto. Hades looked at the creature as if he'd made some kind of mistake in the process. Then he noticed small drops of blood trickling down his feet. He raised a hand to the demon's eye and touched it, pulling back to see that there was blood oozing from the socket. TCH, I should have known it was too early to use this to summon demons. I can't even get it right. Oh good. You. The demon stopped fiddling with his non-existent fingers as he looked at his new creator. Kill him. The demon looked away from Hades and looked at the boy who held the sword in front of him. Then he looked back at Hades. Then to Naruto. This went on for a few seconds until he nodded his necklace head and stood up. He looked at Naruto for several moments before disappearing into a blur. Before Naruto could react, the demon butted headfirst into the hooded boy's stomach. Naruto's eyes widened as he spat blood, returning from the attack with lightning speed as he pounded into a destroyed house. When Naruto tried to get up, he was already being intercepted by the demon who bombarded his dejected form with animal blows. Naruto protected himself from as many blows as he could with his arms and swords. But even then, the demon's barrage seeped in and he was punched in the face or disemboweled every few moments. As Naruto tried to fend off the monster, he seemed focused only on destroying it by any means necessary. As the demon backed away for another attack, Naruto took the opportunity to stab it in the head with Excalibur. The creature let out a sort of painful scream as it took several steps back, long enough for Naruto to leap up and punch it where his face should have been. As the demon staggered back, he regained his balance and slowly drew his sword from the hole in his face. He held the sword in front of Naruto as he slowly bent and broke it. Naruto growled and lunged forward, their fists meeting as they continued to subdue each other. When Naruto was hit with a cross jab, he punched back in the face. And when Naruto elbowed the creature's head, it spun and struck him where it was vulnerable in the chest. They continued these little strokes back and forth for 3 minutes until Naruto found an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. As the demon backed away for a broad hook, Naruto dug his outward-pointing fingers into the gaping crevice in its head. While the creature was stunned, Naruto pushed with all his strength to pin his other hand right next to the first. Hades watched with a curious eye as he saw the boy screaming as loud as he could as the demon screamed in agony. Naruto pushed with all of his enhanced strength and split the demon in two. The ancient Jinchuriki weapon took a deep breath as he held the 2 separate pieces of the demon's body in each hand. He slowly raised his head and looked at Hades with cold, ferocious eyes. Hades actually applauded the boy's efforts to fight the summoned monster. Even if it was a low-class summoned devil, boy did he tear a devil apart. That deserved praise. Very good. Very, very good. Maybe I misjudged you. Or, maybe a stronger demon was enough to kill a little one. He yelled Naruto as he split the demon's body in half, returning it to pure magic as he rushed at Hades, head to toe in armor. Running as fast as he could, closing the distance every second as he closed on the incredibly powerful man, Hades idly raised his hand from under his cloak and pointed 2 fingers at Naruto. Since Naruto was just over 10 feet away from him, he funneled all of the armor around his body into his left fist, planning to strike the man with all his strength. Flying suit. Pop. A small ball of magic shot out of Hades' fingertips at impossible speeds, hitting Naruto in his reformed arm and knocking him back. As the magic scattered around his hand, the boy was surprised to stumble from the change in power. Hades moved his fingers slightly and aimed again. Explode. This time, Naruto was hit in the kneecap, losing speed and stumbling past the man he tried to attack. He spent a second clutching his leg in pain and checking what had happened. He saw that there was a small puncture wound and blood oozing from where his knee had been hit. The boy slowly looked behind the man who didn't even recognize his existence. He took a moment to catch his breath, then turned to squeeze the back of the man's neck. Pop. Another bullet fired him on his shoulder, making the child cry out while he grabbed his pain in his arm. He looked up to see that the man had already turned and shot him faster and could run in attack. Naruto put all the strength he could into his. He fell to his knees again as he was hit in the stomach. He tried to get up on him. He slipped from where his left arm was struck from under him. Every move or attack Naruto tried, the bearded teacher was already there with a bullet indicating where he was going. As Naruto sat on his knees looking at the man, he pointed both hands at the mustachioed boy. Bang, 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 bang. Naruto was hit across his entire body, his chest, your arms, her legs, his head, his feet, his stomach, your lungs, her hips, her knees. Wherever he was visible he was exposed to the punishment of the old man's magic. Naruto's body thrashed violently on the floor as Hades continued to attack the boy relentlessly, laughing like a hyena as the boy screamed in agony. Hades stopped the flow of magic between his fingers, breathing as he watched his handiwork. There were bloodstains and bruises all over the boy's young body. His clothes were riddled with holes where bullets had pierced his body. The boy was breathing heavily as he tried to move any part of his body, his eyes widening as he watched the old man watch him. I already enjoyed it, boy. Now I'm going to give you the choice of how you want it to end. Could I snap your neck and do it fast? Either. Can you keep fighting this futile battle and can we see you trying to hold on to the last bit of your life? Your choice? Naruto grabbed the dirt under his hand as he tried to get up. Then she looked towards the forest and pushed with her left hand, getting enough air to stumble before running feebly towards the fire-scarred forest. Hades sighed wearily as he rubbed the bridge of his nose, shaking his head before chuckling softly. He had to admit it. This kid was really funny. Hades watched in silence, letting the cold air from the city ruffle his cloak as he waited for a sign of the boy's struggle. The flicker of one side of the forest was still burning as some smoke rose into the sky. He waited patiently until he heard a swishing sound in his ear. He turned around to intercept the attack until he felt a pebble touch his head. Hades felt the rocks keep hitting his blind spots as the boy hid in the shade of the burnt trees. He was using his cloak for cover over the blackened wood as he tried to divert the withered man's attention as he looked for an opportunity. It was actually quite impressive. Like a hunter trying to slow down his prey, waiting for the right moment to end it. Hades breathed slowly, waiting for the moment when the blonde menace would reveal itself. Hades silently moved his index finger in a formation, a stream of black magic following him where he told it to. When Hades noticed a gust in the shadows of the fire, he pointed in that direction and said quietly, Amaterasu. Formula 25. In an instant, Naruto was surrounded by black and purple runes that covered his entire field of vision. The symbols revolved around him like planets around the sun. He couldn't figure out how to escape the huge area of effect surrounding him, so he did what he did best. He's prepared. Boom! From a place several miles away from the destroyed city and the dark guild ship, a woman silently searched among the trees and bushes for the plants she was looking for. Usually, she didn't have to stock up that much, but ever since the pink and black-haired brats came together, that red-haired brat sent them home almost every day. And especially after a stupid cake-related incident and a new brat joining the guild when he had to heal every single person for some stupid injuries. Needless to say, it was absolutely not worth arriving unprepared. Suddenly she heard a low rumble sweep through her section of wood, scaring the deer and birds around her into flight. She leapt to her feet and calmed the horse that was carrying her carriage with an apple from her pocket, stroking his mane and calming her concern. He rolled his eyes and saw a cloud of dust and smoke rising in the distance. She decided she needed to move before this shock came. A massive blast of magic and air shook the ground around him. The resulting surge of power caused trees to bend and snap, putting out the fires that once burned. The vessel creaked from the force of the explosion and the river rippled and crashed. Several members of the Dark Corporation ran down the ship's steps, watching the commotion outside. Everyone saw Hades standing there calmly as the pressure of the wind blew his cloak insanely. All the men covered their eyes to resist the air pressure. Master Hades, what's going on? Don't worry. This battle is over. The cloud of smoke finally dispersed as everyone saw a huge blast radius which was clearly shown by the number of broken trees and burning wood around the center. At the edge of the area of effect, a motionless body lay on its back, unperturbed by what was happening around it. His cloak and shirt were gone, burned and destroyed by the force of the explosion. His boots were just rags torn off his feet while his long pants were reduced to burnt shorts. His skin was steaming and red from the intensity of the attack. All the guild members seemed shocked to see the guildmaster kill the boy they were dealing with so easily. The men looked at each other and laughed, taking the opportunity to beat up the bastard son's remains. They began walking towards him, weapons ready. Wait. The men stopped at their leader's order as his expression hadn't changed. He is still alive. All the lesser wizards gasped at his proclamation as they stared at the body of the beaten blonde boy. Though very subtle and almost completely imperceptible, they could see very small movements in his chest as he breathed very shallowly. His eyes were closed and he couldn't even hear anything properly, a buzzing in his head. Most people would be dead by now, you know? Hell, they'd give up after the demon started its charge. But no, you fed. You sent all that strengthening magic through your body at the last possible second and used that reforming arm as a vanguard against the attack. But even then, it wasn't enough to protect you. To Naruto, all his words were nothing but dribbles. Blackouts he couldn't recognize as he slipped deeper and deeper into the waiting darkness. I'd be surprised, but to be honest, I expected this from you. After all, you were the one who almost ruined everything in the tower for me. Well, I guess I should let my men extract their pound of flesh before they get nervous. Even in his exhausted state, even when her body was bleeding and burning and he couldn't tell what was going on around her, he could tell one thing. He could recognize a word in all the gibberish the man was saying. Only one. Tower. Wait. Hades could hear that faint, almost non-existent plea, even in the slow wind around him. He watched in shock as the boy tried to rise onto his hands. As he attempted, he staggered from his inability to support his own weight and vomited a large amount of saliva and blood. He backed away as he tried to at least lift his head, to look at the man who outpowered him. Why, you said tower. What do you know about the tower? His eyes were narrowed and blood was streaming down his face, trickles pooling under his damaged body. Hades barely stared at him when the question was asked. Who are you? Years ago, I found an isolated cult deep in the mountains, praying to a dead god. They worshipped and idolized him, willing to sacrifice blood and flesh to please his offerings. I told them of a place where they could go to fulfill a dream, to awaken this god from his deathbed and bring about his new kingdom. Naruto actually listened as closely as he could, slowly realizing where the familiar story was going. They would just have to follow my instructions and their reason for living would be complete. They would have to gather hundreds of workers and sacrifices to give to meet the requirements, but then their work would be complete. That's the tower I helped build. My name is Hades. Guildmaster Grimoire Heart, creator of the Balam Alliance, and I will herald the new great wizarding world, led by the great Zareth. Naruto was horrified by this news. The man in front of him, this man who had beaten him to a bloody pulp, was the man who had built the tower. The place where he had been a slave for who knows how many days. Where every night people go to sleep crying. Where the only better option you could have was to slit your wrists or your throat and hope they never find you. Spitting out the same, holy god of death, bullshit those bastards climbed the tower with. Naruto shivered as anger, pain, melancholy and remorse rose inside him. Why? He got Hades' attention as with renewed vigor, Naruto yelled at him. Why should you aspire to something like this? Building a tower that killed more than it could save? I have seen people die every day, some have taken their own lives just to end their misery, and I've seen my friends cry for freedom every day, pasting smiles on our faces to survive and move forward. The bodies of the fallen, of the runners, piled up like sacks of clothes and meat. I saw it every day. Why would you want to? Why would you put us through so much just to achieve a pointless goal? The lives of everyone who surrendered in that tower. The slaves. The cult. My friends. Your families. What do they mean to you? Nothing. They were needed. Naruto looked dejected at the quick and simple response he received from the stoic man. They couldn't fight alone, so I doubt they would have been of much use. If they couldn't fight those silly cult members, then they weren't ready for the wizarding world he was creating. The tower wasn't going to work in the end anyway, so whoever lost in the process was just a necessary sacrifice for the future. Naruto looked at the man horrified by the cold and calculated meaning of his words. All those people, all those men and women he worked with. The lives that have been ruined and affected in the process. Rob Jichon has lost an arm. Jelal had gone mad. Wally and Simon were taken from their families, crying every day for their safety. Sho and Millie Chan would never be the same, traumatized by pain and death from a young age. Elsa lost her parents. Kazuya and Erika died trying to fight for a form of freedom for her, and he just said, was necessary. I guess I should thank you for your efforts and work to help me get this far. Maybe I'll incorporate their lives into the wizarding world when SMAAAASSSHHHHH Hades actually lost his footing in the massive earthquake that hit the city area. The ship rumbled and houses collapsed to the saddled ground beneath them. All the guild members trembled in fear as Hades turned, looking at the cause of the shattering force. The boy had fallen to the ground, his left fist hit the ground. And from that blow, a crater corresponding to Amaterasu's attack was formed under the ground and the stone cracked. The boy was on one knee, his body still badly injured but for the time being forgotten. His eyes darkened as his teeth were crushed with such force that it added to the blood pouring from his mouth. Was it necessary? All those lives? Those people? Your families? The cries of despair and pain? His last attempts at freedom and contact with his lost loved ones? Their last chance to fight for their lives, and were they needed? Necessary? He raised his head and gave Hades the eyes of a killer beast. The eyes he was forced to use when Danzo forced him to kill for sport. Eyes soaked with tears of grief and grief for the dead. I will kill you. I will kill you. The ground under his feet splintered as he leapt straight at the old man, screaming for blood as he stood up as fast as he could. When he was close, he spun several times in the air and hooked his left fist around Hades' already prepared outer block. Hades actually winced as the power behind the blow was so much more impressive that his arm was shaking. Naruto then sent a wave of attacks at the man as he tried to rip out the old bastard's throat. Elbow to the side. A straight jab that fakes into a left hook. A tornado kick that results in a dropped axe kick. Naruto's body was shaking and the power behind them was weakening. But despite his injuries, the boy's attacks were becoming faster and more fluid, making it difficult for Hades to block them, if only by a small fraction. Aide pushed the boy by the arm and made him slide a few meters. The boy growled in anger as the tears fell unimpeded down his face. Hades jabbed a finger at the boy as he tried to lunge at him again, thrusting his left fist as far back as possible to strike. As the magic built on his fingertips, Naruto reversed the direction of his attack and destroyed the ground beneath them. The floor was smashed and chipped, dust and smoke covering all of Hades' senses. He chuckled a little at the boy's clever but desperate attempt to land a hit. He kept turning, hearing footsteps running after him. As Hades waited a moment to get his bearings, she heard a whisper behind him. He pointed to the ground, where a sudden shadow approached his lower body. She released the suppressed attack and vaporized the item. It was revealed to be a rock when the stone exploded into hundreds of smaller pebbles. Hades smiled because he had already foreseen this outcome. He looked above his head, where a human shadow was crawling over him, ready to pounce on him and tear him apart. With her other hand she aimed at the falling figure and unleashed her next attack. The blast blasted through the man's other side, leaving a stream of flesh and bone with a gaping hole. Diana. Hades' eyes widened as the figure came into focus. It was his guild member questioning him during the fight. He was already dead when his bloody body came closer and closer to fall on him. Without remorse, he struck the body with both hands. And then he realized what was happening. She saw him coming towards him. As he pushed the dead subordinate away, the boy came straight at him. Use the corpse as a diversion to surprise the old wizard. Hades threw his hands back, trying to bring them up in front of his face for protection. But just as their arms were about to join, the metal arms passed across the open space and headed straight for his face. Ugh! Hades shouted through closed teeth when the child's demon improved his hand caveat 3 fingers in his right eye, raising the trump card he had worked for years to create. From inside the ship, his heart did not work badly and short-circuited because the connection device is destroyed. Yelled Naruto as he tried to drive his hand further into the man's eye until he pulled it down, leaving 3 long, deep, bloody cuts on the right side of his face. As Hades backed away, Naruto took the opportunity in the air to grab him by the neck and punch him as hard as he could with his armored right fist. Hades flew out of the dust cloud, hit the side of his plane, and slid down until his feet landed. The old man leaned against the side of the ship as he covered the open, bleeding right socket of his old eye. He couldn't even feel a trace of the magical power of the eye or the heart. He got angry and agitated, swearing that the moment the baby came out. Say oh. Hades was taken aback as Naruto shot out of the dust, driving his left hand through the skin and into the older wizard's stomach. Hades vomited blood as the force of the attack created craters and cracked the hull of the ship behind him. In a ferocious fury, he pulled his blood-soaked hand out of the gaping hole in his stomach and began to deliver a massive barrage of quick, hard blows to the area surrounding the wound. The hull continued to crack as Hades grunted in pain each time the blows combined into a loud thud. After a while Naruto started to work his way up, cracking and breaking the bottom half of the man's ribs as he tried to make him suffer as hard as possible. Hades tried to retaliate, throwing a quick punch to knock the boy down, but found the boy had escaped. Not only that, while Hades' arm was in front of him, Naruto gripped his wrist tightly and connected his feet to the old man's face, pushing it through the weakened metal of the ship's hull and pulling the arm out of place. The ship shook with the force of the attack as members inside the ship tripped and fell. In the main room inside the ship, Hades lay on the floor covered in the ship's debris. He stood up, trying to ignore the pain in his abdominal area and the blurry vision he had from the blood loss. When he looked up, he saw the boy flying towards him, samurai sword in hand, his eyes white with intense fury. Naruto stabbed Kusanagi through the artery in Hades' right arm, pinning him to the ground as the wound bled. As Hades screamed in pain, Naruto pinned his body to the ground with his knees on either side of the man's body. He then leaned back and struck the man's face with his left fist, silencing the man's screams and gouging craters in the wooden floor. As Hades gasped for breath, Naruto struck him again with his other fist. And then he began to take turns as he created a flurry of quick strokes at the man's face, piercing thuds created each time he struck. Hades' body contorted as Naruto yelled as loud as possible to punish the old man. The skin from his fist peeled off as it was covered in his and Hades' blood. From the catwalks, members of the Grimoire gathered and watched in horror as the boy tried to beat him to death with his bare hands. Everyone issued an order and unleashed a combination of their magical attacks, destroying the boards around him and some explosions connecting to the boy's back. Naruto didn't care anymore. He didn't care if he came out alive or dead. If he got hit, it didn't matter. If he was tortured, it didn't matter. All that mattered was that he was close to killing this man underneath him. And she would make him suffer. As Naruto continued to drive his fists into the broken bone in the man's skull, Hades tried to think of his options. He was playing with this kid, like a lion with his lunch. And he was so close to death, just one concentrated attack and he would have ended that boy's existence. And in an instant everything changed. His eye was gone. His ship was broken. And now he was being beaten to death by a furious boy who couldn't control his temper. And when he looked through the barrage of shots, he saw the image of a demon. A demon who only cared about turning his head into a pink concoction under his power. And I had to say that this point of view was incredible. Hades concentrated and estimated the amount of magic in his body and how much power she could put into his attack. He then felt how much damage his body could take if he used his attack. But with her choices, it was either that or continue to feel her cartilage squeezed with every blow. And anything less probably wouldn't stop the guy. Hades moved his fingers in a pattern and summoned what was left of his magical power. A familiar set of black and purple runes appeared around the two as Naruto seemed to have enough presence of mind to notice the wider circle of affection around them. Beneath all the blood, broken jaws and cheekbones, bloodied eyes and broken teeth, Hades smiled. Amaterasu. Formula 50. The airship's hull exploded in all directions as the magic circle expanded in the center of the ship. An even more powerful shockwave tore through the landscape as the trees that must have brought down the vessel were forcibly felled. In the nearby river, several planks of wood and steel fell into its depths, along with a body floating downstream. All the members of Heart coughed and tried to peer through the dust, trying to find other members of their guild. Dozens of men descended to ground level, trying to find any sign that their master had sacrificed himself to kill the boy. In the center of the blast radius, the guild members cowered in fear. Hades lay on his back, his clothes completely destroyed and burned to a crust. His skin was fried and smoking as the sword on his arm had melted from the extreme force of the attack. His face was swollen and misshapen, blood dripping from his mouth and mangled nose. The open wound on his stomach was seared, but blood still covered his lower body. Gao. All guild members breathed a sigh of relief as they heard the motionless body coughing up blood. Despite her badly damaged body, she was still strong enough to fight and survive. When the Dark Guild members began preparing a medical room for their master, they tried to keep him calm during his moment of shock. "Master, you will be fine. We'll call Ultra-sama to come repair the ship. And you'll be better than ever when we finish treating you." Gawk. Ah. Hee hee hee. Hee 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 hee. The people running around the defeated guildmaster stopped when they heard him kind of laugh as he lay covered in blood and bruises. "Teacher?" Jahihihi. Ehihihihiha. Ka ha 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 ha. Ah ha 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 h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h a h. Everyone watched as their master seemed to collapse, laughing maniacally as doctors arrived to rush him to the ICU. The pink-haired old woman walked along the riverbank, picking the special herbs that she knew, only grew at the edge of the forest. She admired the sounds of peaceful nature and the wildlife that surrounded her. No annoying brats. There are no dumb old friends who saved your life. No more noise in the distance with flying smoke. You might get used to this. Maybe you could move here. See how those little thugs would make fun of her then. As she admired the clear waters, she noticed a change in the hue of the water's color. She stood up and entered, running her hand through the midst of the strange phenomenon. When he cupped his hand down a bit, he realized it was a blood emission. She followed it upstream, as the stream seemed to gradually increase as she went. When she finally arrived, she looked up in shock. A naked blonde boy with a metal prosthetic had his arm wrapped around a log as his grotesque wounds bled into the water. Excellent. But problems.
That's it for this part, guys. Thanks for listening to this video. If you did enjoy this part of the story, like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you all for your help and support, and have a great day.